Jesus. This is that's the worst sound too. What is Michael, what is it, Michael?
What were we supposed to watch, Abe?
Yeah, what did you watch?
No, what were you say first? You say what we were supposed to watch.
Oh yeah. We were supposed to watch Punch Drunk Love. Michael,
Oh, no.
What did you watch?
I watched Punkadunkalunka.
Punkadunkalunka.
It's a dream I had. I'm not fully prepared.
No.
I did not prepare this time. I'm sorry. Usually it has meaning.
I love that they're just getting more mediocre, like more sad.
Found it.
Like, well, my faith in that bit is complete.
Completely
and he's
justified.
right. And he is right. That's what we're covering today on Andersons.
Andersons. I'm one Anderson,
Yes.
Michael Swaim's son.
I'm the other son, Abe Epperson's son.
Yeah, you get the double son. You get that son squared action.
Yeah,
Hot,
hell yeah.
baby.
Son of
hot,
Epper.
Hot son on son action. All right, that's enough of that.
Yeah, it's enough of that.
And we're,
But welcome. Hey, guess what?
Whoa.
It's a Paul Thomas Anderson episode. We switch in this podcast between Wes Anderson and Paul Thomas Anderson. Last time we covered the Royal Tenenbaums, and this month we got Punch Drunk Love, baby.
That's right. Which I believe we've covered once before.
As a frame rate.
As a
with
straight
Teresa
up
Lee.
frame rate. Yeah, which means, and it was a Teresa episode. Okay. So that means
Correct.
There's definitely like area unexplored, because I know when we talk to Teresa, boy, it's Tangent Town in a delightful way. But that means I still feel pretty confident. I was worried slightly, but then rewatching it, as I rewatched it, I'm like, oh yeah, this holds up to a second scrutiny, third
baby.
scrutiny. Yeah, I'm pretty sure
I watch it every it's one of my top watches.
Well, yeah.
Of his.
I think
honestly.
made substantive notes of stuff that I didn't say last time, and there's still plenty of it. So let's get into it.
And it's super dense still, even though it's only an hour and a half. If you haven't seen it, I really do suggest you go and watch it. It's a sensory film, to say the least.
It's
you
blue.
have to use all of your senses to watch this one.
Mainly your eyes and the color blue. No, that's not
and your ear holes.
The ear holes for sure.
And your worry holes. I was worried the whole time. My worry holes were getting used.
I was worrying on some holes. So on this show, we analyze each film through 3 spectra, as we generally do with our deep dive series. And this is no exception. We'll be talking diegesis, which is what happened in the movie, literally, the parts of the movie. We'll be talking pedagogy, which is underlying themes and underpinning philosophies, most poetical. And then Howdy Doodad, which is where we just talk about final thoughts, especially if we have trivia or behind the scenes information or nitty gritty that we can bring to bear. If it's based on a book or a comic, that's when we talk about the book or the comic. That won't happen in this case.
Book or the comic.
It's usually the shortest segment. Why am I explaining it so much? Let's get into Jesus.
Yes. This is I mean we usually have some form of caveat before we just say scene 1.
I flummoxed you. You're flummoxed.
No, I'm not flummoxed. You're flummoxed.
Less flummoxed than you are.
So he made Magnolia last, Anderson, that is, and he wanted to make something that was very short, very 90 minutes long. So he wrote a movie for Adam Sandler and Emily Watson in particular, and he wanted to make an art house Adam Sandler film. And so that's what you get. What else is relevant? It didn't even make its money back.
Really?
It's 25 million, box office 24.7 million. And it's just like, why don't we have good movies? Well, this is why we don't have any good movies anymore. No one watches them. I don't know. Maybe that's very, very reductive. But, point is, more of this, please, from Abe.
Spot on. More of that.
Yeah. Who else is in it? Philip Seymour Hoffman's in it. Luis Guzman is in it. Robert Smigol's in it.
Yeah, these are I can't confirm Robert Smigel off the top of my head, but the other two were in Boogie Nights and various other things respectively. So like he's definitely doing his crew. He's bringing his crew along. This adds Sandler to the crew. And of course, famously, Sandler will then go on to be the dude from Phantom Thread and the dude from There Will Be Blood. That would be amazing.
Oh my God. If he just, I mean,
you made him my boy.
All right. So Netflix just came out with this movie Hustle. And before that, there's Uncut Gems.
Yeah.
I don't think this part of the career would ever happen if it weren't for Punch Drunk Love, right? Like, I think we can safely say that 2002 was the first time we were like, Adam Sandler. Yeah, he can act. That guy can act.
Well, definitely for us. And it's definitely the first time that offer was available to be seen. But
that's true.
I think... So I guess even if the public didn't notice, because it did so dismally, the industry definitely noticed for sure.
Yeah.
Because it led to a whole tangent universe where Adam Sandler's a serious actor. And then he jumps back to streaming services and does something about magic shoes or whatever the fuck he'll do. He does it all shoes. Back and forth.
Magic shoes that you tie and then you go back in time and you hit golf balls. That's, I think most people are now aware of what the thing is. We should dive in, right? We should just dive into the movie. Yeah. Yeah.
Opening shot. Literally a man in a corner blending into his environment, talking on the phone and being essentially hassled over the phone. And it's great because it sets up the entire character and the crux of the issue. And it's a cheap, easy shot anyone could fucking get. The set decoration is one blue stripe across and it's just brilliant. So, yeah. All right, I took the opening shot. You do the rest.
Yeah. So after he talks with the Healthy Choice customer service person, he which is a plot line in this movie. He's distracted by the sound of a wire hitting a fence. And I mean, this is all still the same shot. Yeah. So we just pan and dolly. He's distracted by the sound of like a wire hitting a fence, and he goes outside and he witnesses an unexplainable car accident, I'd say, right?
Well, yeah. So that's, and I won't stop us this frequently for the whole thing, but I do think that's one of the big yawning questions that I like that screams to be tackled every time you watch it is like, this watch through, did you have any particular thoughts on the origin of the harmonium and the nature of the flipped car that flips and then disappears?
I feel like I've seen this movie enough. I feel like I cracked it.
Yeah.
And I still got it, in terms of movie understanding. But yeah, in terms of diegesis, I mean, the car appears to hit nothing and then flips wildly, violently at high speed. And I think that's all you really need to know to kind of...
Well, and there's no consequence. Like, then it's gone.
And then it's gone. Yeah. And I think that's something we'll unpack a little bit later. But immediately, for no reason, a cab pulls up and drops off a harmonium and speeds away. And it's just utterly chaos. It all happens at once. And they're seemingly unrelated, but there's a sense of urgency all around him. And he is just like, what was going on? And so he goes back and finishes his phone call. And I guess that completes that little bit. I think we should wait to unpack that in the pedagogy.
Really?
But,
I want to know what you think the car means.
You want to do a little side pedagogy? Yeah.
I guess I don't see that as pedagogy. See, we're
really?
Constantly still always arguing about what the nature of the segments are. Then Luis Guzman, who works with him, asks him, what's the deal with the blue suit you're wearing? And he says, I decided to get dressed for work. I'm not exactly sure why. Which I think just is a symbol that he's ready for his life to change today in some magical way that he didn't even know. But he prepared for something important to happen today. And indeed it does. But we get basically that hard cuts to an intro sequence, which is just beautiful blue and red colors playing together among stars. And the red and blue is important because there's a lot of color theory play in this, which we've covered mostly in the frame rate. So I won't talk too much about color theory. I would say you could check out the frame rate with Teresa for that. But he's also getting hassled over the phone by his, 7 sisters? I think it's 7 sisters.
Yeah.
One of them says specifically, get back to chatting with your customers, you fucking phony, chatty piece of shit. So there's this heightened reality of he is the whipping boy of his family, but to a cartoonish degree. Like they nag the shit out of him constantly. Guzman says, I didn't even know you had a sister, which I think is interesting because it subtly reveals how deeply disconnected he is from everyone. This is his business partner. You don't know that I have 7 sisters who constantly harass me. Like that means we barely talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's just a series of sisters, including one of the sisters, Elizabeth, who's trying to set him up with someone who we learn is eventually Lena, who was someone that Barry, Adam Sandler, met right after the harmonium accident, which is she drives in almost hitting the harmonium and then asks if they're like, she's looking for a mechanic. She's like, she asks him straight up, are you a mechanic? Even though he's clearly wearing a blue suit, and she trusts him with her key. She's like, can I just leave this here and you just look after it? I'll be back and I'll pick it up. He struggles with the interaction because that's what Barry does. And we learn later in the movie, she actually orchestrated this meeting. But this is, there's a sense of fate in that the idea is one of the sisters is actually setting him up with her. So she's mentioned this before to multiple people, and he tries, Barry on the phone with every sister, tries to eject from the party. That is what they're all talking about. Like, are you coming to the party? And he's like, nah, maybe I got to do a gym membership thing. And he gets chastised for it. So literally he can do no right. He's damned if he does. He's damned if he doesn't in terms of his sisters. So we get an implied history there too.
So he does go to the party. We cut to the party. He quickly finds out that she didn't invite the date he was set up with, which he's like relieved by. But the party's still a fucking nightmare because everyone, the sisters and their various spouses and whatnot, are constantly yammering about him and how they used to call him gay boy when he was a kid and he would freak out. And they just keep yelling at him basically until he gets stimulus overload and kicks all the glass doors in their house and they shatter.
The scene really
they
shows...
immediately are like, what's wrong with you? Why did you do that? When it's so painfully obvious why he did that. It was
why he did that.
Like
well, I
on
mean,
the senses.
Yeah, it's also like quite an overreaction, but like the scene is, it really shows how Sandler like gets the assignment, and he really he actually is a fantastic actor. I've never seen a more accurate description. Like, did you notice this time or any time that he like greets his sisters in a certain way with his body language, and then he goes to the next room and he meets the children and the husbands, and it's just like I've never seen a more accurate description of someone who's trying to like be a social chameleon than like this scene in particular. Like his posture, his tone, his eye contact just changes based off who he's talking to. And he's like a more confident, stronger with the husbands, more defensive and peacemaking with the sisters. And he's an absolute alien to children. And I just thought that it's all one shot, and like the nuance of it all is so very like he does not belong anywhere in this equation.
Right. And underlined by the fact that he confides in one of the sisters' husbands, Robert Smigel, that he needs help, he needs therapy, and the guy's like, I'm a dentist, Barry. And he goes, but can you hook me up with it? But I figured I could tell you because you're a doctor, it has to stay confidential. Later we find out that he tells all the sisters that this happened, so it's a sad, pathetic scene. And he's
got self-esteem issues and anger issues.
And when he confides in people, they rat him out to each other and talk about him
there's
behind
no
his
help.
back. Yeah, there's no help for him.
No help anywhere.
He
next scene?
stops at the grocery store and seems to have an aha moment when he finds a bunch of cups of pudding that are Healthy Choice brand, which we recognize as the people he was talking on the phone with. And you're like, what's going on here? He obviously has some kind of scam that's developing. I don't think we understand all the details yet, but we will soon enough. Then we cut to him at home in his apartment, and he's trying phone sex because he's so lonely. And it's a really horrible, alienating experience where they laboriously take all his information. And then he doesn't want to jerk off necessarily. He just wants to talk, but the girl just wants him to jerk off so the job can be complete. So he does jerk off. And it just seems like a really hollow, horrible experience. Then on top of that, the next morning, they call him back and start asking him for money. And
they blackmail him.
Essentially say, well, should I call your girlfriend and ask them for money, if you know what I mean?
Even though he lied about that.
He doesn't have a girlfriend.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. But he's still upset about being threatened and blackmailed, obviously. And he goes to his office and he's like fidgeting with the harmonium, trying to fix it up with duct tape. My interpretation of that was he's confronted with something he can't control. So he tries to fix something. He tries to control something. Yeah.
I also think that there is a beautiful moment with him playing, like it's a raspy harmonium because of aforementioned hole, but he found some form of calm. The score, which is the first 10 minutes of the film, with all the chaos before the party, basically, like the score dips and he plays, and it's like the score waits for and it's your solo. So there, we get the sense that it's like the filmmaker telling us in this moment, this is the only sense of calm in this chaotic world for him. Mm-hmm. Everything else is stuff he can't control, like you said, or stuff that he doesn't want any part of. And this is something that he actually wants to do, and he treasures it, and he wants to make it nice again.
Yeah. Let's see. Got to consult my notes. We learn a little bit more about his work because he's selling plungers to people. And then Lena comes in, right?
Lena's brought in by Beth.
Yeah.
And so the second time
it's revealed that this weird lady you met that morning is the one you were set up with.
And it's chaos once again all around in the workplace, but you notice that Lena does this thing where she blocks all the nonsense of Beth. And he blocks all the nonsense of his job. And they kind of just try to force a kind conversation about each other. It's it really is the meet and greet, the meet cute bit. And it's, there's something like when you look at it, it really is kind of like a flip of a normal rom-com, which we'll get into more later. But just in this single instance, what you notice is that rather than in the meet cute, them seeing like the power of each other, which is the typical rom-com thing, like, oh wow, I like what you're bringing to the table, you're weird, you're quirky, or whatever. We just move right past that, and we're talking about it's the world versus these two, and they both are equipped to deal with different circumstances, but they just know that they want to talk to each other. And I think that that's one of the unique aspects of this film, is like how it approaches the rom-com. But they meet for the first time. She kind of returns back after the cacophony, because literally forklifts are running into, pieces of the building, et cetera, et cetera. And she comes back and she just is like, you know what? I'm just going to ask you out. And he's like, yeah, I'll go to dinner with you. And just right then, Georgia, who's the phone sex operator, calls back and says, you just made a war for yourself that you can't afford. And then we cut to Georgia, literally in Provo, Utah. She works for works for Philip Seymour Hoffman, and he's clearly a scam artist, and he pays some men to go rough up Barry in LA because he lives in Sherman Oaks. Mm-hmm. And then we cut to the date where Lena tells him that she saw a photo of him, wants to meet him, and then she orchestrated the whole car thing. And he tells her about a DJ that he listens to and his pudding scheme. And when she brings up the story,
I think Beth it's important. Sorry, just to say, this is where we get the details of the pudding scheme, which are specifically that he found the cheapest possible product, which is individually labeled pudding cups that you can accrue like box tops to get X number of frequent flyer miles. And his goal is I could get millions of frequent flyer miles, which I could then exchange like currency because I don't travel.
For a few $1,000s, yeah. And never buy a ticket ever again, which becomes
and somehow
later.
Leverage that, like as he says, well, frequent flyer miles are a new economy in and of themselves.
His epiphany in the supermarket is that they sell for 99 cents a pack of 4, but they're individually marked. So it's like for a quarter, you can get 500 or 1,000 miles. But anyway, it's a number that keeps coming up. I think that's one of the things that Paul Thomas Anderson does is when he uses a number, he really uses that number. Like it's everywhere in his screenplay. But yeah, Beth told Lena a story about him as a child throwing a hammer, and he shuts down because he does not like any
It's
reference.
obviously a trauma point. It's the same thing that triggered him at the dinner party, and she brings it up.
Yeah,
again.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so he says, I have to go to the bathroom, and then he just tears up the bathroom. He punches the walls, rips off the wall, like the doors, and when a waiter or the maitre d' or whatever comes and accuses him of doing it, he denies it, and the waiter says, you got to get out of here before I break your skull, man. And so they're thrown out of the restaurant. On the way back, Lena mentions that she's going to Hawaii, I think, for work, and she also hints that he should visit because it's, I think, implied that during the date at one point, probably because he's just like agrees to anything by default, that he travels as well for work, when in fact he does not. He's never traveled. And while he's leaving, he says, have a good trip and bye-bye. And then he repeats that like a mantra as he's exiting, because he feels he's such an idiot, and bye-bye is a stupid way to exit a conversation, even though it's not really. A lot of this is just insecurity. While he's leaving, Barry gets the phone call at the front desk. It's Lena, and she says she wanted to kiss him just as he was leaving. So as he runs back, after getting lost in her apartment building, he finds his way back up and they kiss. And then back at his apartment building, the Mattress Man gang, I guess the 4 blonde brothers that we saw in that the Mattress Man, Philip Seymour Hoffman, was talking to, basically just abducts Barry, and he's forced to cash out $500 at an ATM. And one of them hits him, and he falls, and he notices 2 things: a 99-cent store and the fact that they have a Utah plate. And then he starts running away, and he's just growling like a goblin. It's still one of my favorite parts of this movie. He's just, while he's running, he's just, ha, ha, ha. It's just so good. And the pickup truck pulls up and reminds him that they know where he lives. And so why is he running? And he realizes that. So we cut to work the next day, where he decides, you know what, he's going to go to Hawaii because he's got the whole pudding thing. And Luis Guzman and Adam Sandler buy pudding together. But unfortunately, when he calls Healthy Choice to redeem, they need 6 to 8 weeks to process the order. So he gets frustrated and punches a wall. The wounds on his knuckles look like they say love. And the pudding scheme having struck him out, he decides he's going to go to Hawaii anyway. So he goes to the airport. Apparently,
I think it's important
first flight.
Point out that maneuver, because it's basically like, if you've seen The Visit, which is the Shyamalan, where he does it twice. One is this girl has this traumatic memory of a time that someone was molesting her, and she had a chance to shoot them with a rifle and she didn't. And in the present, she suddenly gains the strength to shoot someone. And it's like, oh, good. That traumatic experience taught you the strength you need to shoot someone with a rifle. And in the same movie, they have a kid who didn't do a tackle, and then he needs to tackle an old man, and he's like, this time I can do the tackle. And I just think it's funny how it's just a difference of finesse. It's like the difference between a cook and a chef, man. Those are both planned payoff, but the planned payoff in this case is that he's repeatedly said things like, I don't travel. And we've seen that he has an extreme problem with plans changing. And he's very particular, right, about his routines and his safe environment and control over his surroundings. It's pretty obvious he's neurodivergent in some ways. And what I think is the amazing maneuver that elevates this to genius is that almost every filmmaker, including Shyamalan, would do the thing where, oh, the pudding. And then he uses the pudding to go Hawaii. And you're like, it was his destiny all along to use the pudding to go to Hawaii. And it would be like the exact number of frequent flyer miles he got is how many they can process that gets you to Hawaii. But no, what PTA does is the pudding doesn't work. And he says, for the first time in his life, okay, I don't care about that. Forget about the plan or destiny or whatever. I'll just be bold and do it anyway. I choose to do it. And that's better than it being his destiny. That's better than it working out perfectly. It's so good.
It's better, but it's also obeying the structure of a rom-com, because this is like midpoint. So this is where in those screenplays,
you're like, oh no, an obstacle.
you do see one of the characters in one of the lovers go, I'm going to make an active choice instead. I'm going to get out of my comfort zone. But Michael's right. Paul Thomas Anderson, who does eventually use this whole like healthy choice redeeming frequent flyer miles.
It's literally called Healthy Choice, and it's about him finally making a healthy choice.
It's like it is really, I don't know. It oscillates between perfect and hackneyed to me, but I think you're absolutely right. Just like the love on his knuckles, it's all in the way you do it. It's almost like in this movie, it does feel like a joke. It doesn't feel like sincere. And he's kind of, that's Paul Thomas Anderson's kind of like MO, is he's just like, I don't know, man, why'd you put that in a movie? I don't know, man. It's just like, that seems like what movies seem to do. It's not like that's what I wanted to say. It's like he's like he's doing something. He's not actively, it's not like really ego fueled. But maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading into it. But I do really like that Paul Thomas Anderson does kind of make these choices that are out of left field, but still stay within the genre. And I think this is one of those cases. Yeah.
So he goes to Hawaii. He calls her hotel from a payphone. Well, first he has to get the number or find out where he's staying. So he calls his sister who knows Lena. And I think, again, it's a planned payoff in the same way, because we've seen him, which I love as a blocking directing touch. We've seen him so frightened by Georgia on the phone that even though he's on the phone and not physically talking to someone, he backs up until he's against the wall. I love that touch. And just to highlight the reverse here, now he's on the phone with his sister and he's willing to say, cut out this shit. Stop this shit. I'll fucking kill you. This doesn't have to be this way. There's no reason to treat me this way. Just give me the fucking information.
You're killing me.
You're killing me with the way you treat me.
It's we'll unpack a little bit the I'll fucking kill you part of it. But it's like, it's this mixed thing where you're like, man, he really needs help. You can't say that to anybody, mixed with this catharsis.
But he is moving out of his comfort zone.
He's so good at you're killing me, and you're killing me with the way you are toward me.
The way you treat me.
Is so fucking like, Adam Sandler really nails like, man, yeah, fuck her. Fuck her, and then he says, I'll fucking kill you. And you go, well,
all right, that's a bit much.
Maybe not fuck her like
You're
that.
Dead.
Like, yeah, it's crazy how also how many asinine details are in this movie. You mentioned it before, but small circumstances get in the way. Like after he checks with the front desks and he gets her number, he calls and he gets
some guy.
He gets some guy who's like, you got the wrong number. And he's like, oh. And it's just you're just meant to believe that the operator just put him in touch with the wrong person for the first moment, which I don't know why it's in the movie. It's not. It doesn't help in terms of plot. It's actually a stopgap.
I don't know if this is intentional.
Does inform.
But I will say that then he calls the operator and says, you put me in touch with this room, and that can't be Lena Leonard's room because there shouldn't be a man in that room.
There's a man. Yeah.
And that was one of the few moments in the film where I thought maybe they were trying to signal that he's on the autism spectrum, because he does seem to have this very particular, the social cue thing, and the particular about like, I'm just going to repeat out loud my thought about the logical sequence of events of what's happening here. So I don't know. I don't know if that moment is there for that reason, or if it's just to be a little obstacle. But all he does is call again, and it works this time. So she picks up.
It works this time. And though he does have issues, because he's like, clearly he does say, so like, were you ever married, or like, do you have a boyfriend right now? Because he can't get out of his mind the idea of there's a man there right now, and he gets very extremely jealous, which is something also he should work on. But
they smash, and they have really weird pillow talk,
and it's all pink.
And he says, "Okay, this is funny. This is nice." And they bone. And
I like, you got me out of my hotel room. It's really nice. And he says, it really looks like Hawaii here.
Yeah, he's scrupulously honest with her once he reaches Hawaii. which is great. And the only time we ever see her lie in the movie is in Hawaii when she lies on the phone to his sister and claims that he's not there, which is
that scene is so good because she realizes that Beth is so toxic to Barry, and she's just looking at him with total confidence. And like they're embraced in the love. Barry has a different expression and a comfort of his own. And she just shuts down the Beth conversation. She just says, no, Barry didn't call me last night.
Yeah.
And then I love that she's like, sorry if he's a little weird. Yeah, he was a little strange. You can't say that. I mean, I can think that, but you can't think that. And she just unfazed. Lena's just like,
it just gives you one more shade of
whatever
complexity into the family life. You're like, that whole mess is complex.
She's figuring it out, and they're both just so confident and in love in this scene. Like, I understand why Paul Thomas Anderson wrote it for them two in particular. It fucking breaks my heart. It's so beautiful. And
he's filled with so much confidence that he calls Georgia and basically says, hey, you guys fucked me over and
reverse blackmail,
beat me and took my money. I'm probably going to call the cops unless you call me. So he's very reasonable. He's like, so please call me and talk about how we can go about returning my money, and that'll be that. And that's not going to work out. So on their drive, they get back to the States, obviously,
and he's driving back because they're like, hey, is it cool if we go to like my apartment when we're back? And he's like, I assume that's what was going to happen as they're pulling in to literally his driving spot or his parking spot. They get smashed, by the Mattress Man truck, the four blonde brothers,
the Deadites.
And he just gets out. He notices that Lena's injured. She's bleeding from the forehead.
Makes him Hulk out.
And he hulks out. He turns into a completely different beast. He just lays into the whole gang. He like one pop each. 3 out of 4 of them down with the tire iron in like one hit. That, they brought to the fight, by the way. And then he takes Lena to the hospital. And then he calls the phone sex line again, and he loses his mind at Georgia, demanding that he talk to her supervisor, who gets Dean. That's where we get the first time what Philip Seymour Hoffman's name in this movie is, the Mattress Man. And it's just like toxic masculinity. The phone call basically ensues. It's pretty fucking hilarious, but it's pretty clearly like, I'm the one who's in control. No, I'm the one who's in control.
It's like two junkyard dogs barking at each other. Yeah.
Right. Barry basically tells him to go fuck himself.
Did you just say go fuck myself? Yeah, that wasn't good. You're dead.
No, you're dead.
Like, it's out of his hands now, unfortunately. Yeah.
We cut to Lena noticing that Lena notices that Barry left her at the hospital. Meanwhile, Barry runs to the hospital after the phone call. Phone receiver still in hand. He just ripped it right out. And I assume he ran there because it's he was in his place at Sherman Oaks or something like that. He's too late. She's been discharged, and Barry realizes, he's saddened by this, but Barry realizes that he needs to track down the D&D Mattress Man. So he does through the Yellow Pages or through the operator, and he goes to Utah. Phone still in hand when he arrives in Utah. Also, we know that his car is totally fucked because we saw like that tire was gone after they got crushed. So I think it means the movie's implying he ran from Sherman Oaks to Provo, Utah, which is impossible.
It's magic. Yeah.
That's magic. But then we get that's that Mattress Man scene.
That's that Mattress Man is basically that he just tells him again. He basically just came to do the threat in person is what it boils down to. Right. This can be the end of it. He doesn't even get the money back. He's like, you just have to.
We're done here.
You just have to say that's that. It. Like, you have to let this be. You submit to me. It is like dogs. And he's like, and you didn't call the cops? No. And he's like, all right, that's it. But obviously he can't let it drop because he hates to be humiliated. So he goes, and get out of my store, you fucking pervert. And he goes, what did I just say? And he goes, that's that. And he leaves.
So,
and
two barking dogs. That's all it is. Yeah.
And basically he returns to Lena wanting to say,
I love those lines in that whole sequence though. Before I beat the hell from you, I have a love in my life that makes me stronger than anything you could ever realize.
But we said all this in the frame rate, I'm sure.
Yeah,
but it's
that's
so
true.
good. That's true.
It's so
Bears
good.
repeating. Basically, the
Last
end, he goes
sequence,
to Lena's door. He says, I love you. If it's okay with you, I want to trade in all my pudding and follow you around wherever you need to travel for the rest of your life because I never don't want to be with you. And she's like, but you left me at the hospital. You cannot do that. And he's like, okay, I won't ever do that. And there's this slight hesitation moment where you're like, oh, was that a deal breaker for her? But no, it's not. She embraces him. They kiss. Happy ending.
And you get the vibe that he's going to use his millions of miles to travel with her because she travels all the
And
time.
Be her little pet
Just
boy.
be with her.
Yeah.
So in 6 to 8 weeks, they can go anywhere they want. And yeah, they kiss. End of movie. Or not end of movie, but she comes into his work while he's playing the harmonium. She hugs him. And
there's a shot that almost seems like a Shakespearean framing device where it's not diegetic. It's like a set piece shot of, and here we are in the workplace scene we're familiar with, and it's lit very dramatically, and he's playing the harmonium, and they hug, and you're like, yeah.
And she
it's
she
like a Frank
walks
Capra
up.
ending vignette. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool. And that's the movie.
And then you see Dirk Diggler's dick in all its glory. Finally.
And that's Diegesis in under 40 minutes, in under 30 minutes.
Diggler-Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You want to get into it?
Yeah. Pedagogy.
Let's gauge this pet.
I'll start with my very best one, which I didn't get last time, because I've never noticed at all until this time, which is he repeatedly struggles with glass doors, kicking the glass doors open, obviously, but there's multiple times where he also walks into a glass door at his workplace office.
Yep. And
I love the symbolism of that because it means like he can't navigate passages that other people are easily able to navigate. And it's also a thing that is publicly embarrassing. Like it has so much social stigma attached to it to walk into a glass door.
Also, glass breaks in a cacophony. You know, that's something that keeps coming up.
Hey, everyone, look at this asshole. Yeah, exactly.
It breaks into 1,000 shattered pieces that no one can put back together, and it cannot be denied that it broke. You know, it's like it's not like you can buff it out or something.
And I can't prove this is intentional, but I'll just say at the hotel when Lena calls down to the front office and he realizes she wants him to kiss her. At the moment she calls, he's successfully opening a glass door and walking through it. So it's like, oh, now he can do that. And that earns him the phone call. And it's just about navigating, like he can navigate life. A simple thing like a door. He can navigate it.
Yeah, we didn't do it justice, but it is a surprisingly cute movie for all of the dense themes that are clearly in it. Like, just the idea of when they meet in Hawaii, and everything's pink and everything, and they're doing the scene where they come together from a distance. They see each other at a distance, walk each other. He extends his hand out like he's going to shake her hand. It's just the way he navigates the world is like he's so clearly uncomfortable in every part of it.
But I do think that serendipity visually is definitely a thing that's of intention because the other big one I noticed this time was when he's at the grocery store at the exact moment that we see in his face, in his eyes, he is seeing the pudding for the first time. A lady in a beautiful red dress out of focus walks by in the background. So it's like, even though Lena's not there, her color is there.
Her color is there. Yeah. We're going to talk about that. Let's start with the opening image, though, actually, because we mentioned that we would. So he's talking to Healthy Choice. You mentioned that, but it's the seeking of loopholes, right? He's talking to him about something that is like money saving. It's about taking advantage of mistakes. And it's all around the concept of accumulating power, right? Like the idea behind it is I'm going to have a conversation with this person. I want to get what I want. I want to have power in this situation. So it's reflecting back at the world that the world itself is your enemy, or at least you must do what you need to do to get a leg up. I think it's pretty clear that that's kind of how Barry at first sees the world. And I think another thing it does is we talked a little bit about the inexplicable car accident, which is just, I think, nonsensical chaos at any moment. The world firing shots at you for apparently no reason. So symbolically, even if it's not coming at you, it's just coming around you indiscriminately. The world is, in fact, sending you volleys of threat. But the third beat of the opening image is the nebulous and also inexplicable gift of the instrument, the harmonium. And I think that there's a reason that the man who drops off the harmonium is in black. The frame crops his face, and he's not in a personal vehicle. He's in a cab. He's essentially unknowable, right? And that's like, I think, to me, a placeholder for like, I guess it's kind of like fate handing Barry some music, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think that the point of the film is that, like, we talk about opening images a lot, and it's like usually you can construe exactly what the metaphor at play is going to happen for the rest of the movie in good movies from just the first, like, like 30 seconds to, however long the first sequence is. But the point of the film is that some people find life intolerable, right? And for all of us, definitely we find it full of a lot of suffering, but good can come just as unlikely as the bad. And the gifts can sometimes be a person entering your life and making it all together more tolerable. Now, this isn't new territory for like a rom-com or for any Hollywood story. It's just uncharacteristically a rom-com. It's unnerving because it doesn't ask you to believe that your protagonists need to be like lightly fixed, like in most rom-coms, they're usually like trying to fulfill the maximum of their potential. Barry and Lena have seriously deep issues with pain, and the world demands that they just take it. And this is them finding a union that says you don't have to in this space. And that's what makes it kind of beautiful, as opposed to you became the best self version of yourself. It's exactly like it's a storybook. This is still a storybook message, but it starts from a deeper place, I guess. And you can just see it all in that opening image.
I think that I cry a lot when I watch this movie, and I think that actually this time I realized that it's not because it's a reflection of, to me, this is almost the most seductive romance fantasy I've ever seen, because there's so much serendipity involved. Like, I weep because this is a love that I don't think many actually encounter. It's too perfect. Like, I watched it with my mom this time, and at the end, she said something that I do think everyone has to address when they watch this movie eventually. At the end, she goes, "Oh, she is too good for him, though." Or like, there's still some question as to, other than when they're having sex, Lena's a little weird then. There's some question as to how is Lena so perfect as to just burst onto the scene into his life and reach into his life and be like, "I love you, even though no one cares about you. I'm going to save you from that."
I disagree entirely.
Well,
but
I weep because I don't see that happen often around me.
Right. Yeah. That's true. I don't agree with your mom. I do think that there's, it's fine to think that, but like, obviously, but if you're like paying attention, it's not her movie, so you don't see it, but he outlines a very specifically, like, a very sad, broken woman. She says multiple times to Barry, like, you got me out of my hotel room. Like, she talks about how, like, basically dating is like, it's bullshit. Like, she is definitely one of the in a situation where she's definitely more to put together in terms of like normal, like, I would say, like, world facing, like there's a reference to her having 6 months ago had a boyfriend, but so she's not broken in the same way Barry is. In fact, it's a yin yang situation. That's
what I'm saying. And the odds that you would meet your yang when you're a yin are very low in real life.
What she shares with Barry is this deep, deep unhappiness and this need for a big change, right? Like, Barry has like, we start in medias res. It's kind of funny because the blue suit he's wearing the entire movie, we're supposed to believe that yesterday, if the movie started, he wasn't wearing that suit, and he's never worn that suit because his sisters point out time and time again.
Yeah.
Like, he tries, the harmonium is obviously like a metaphor for him, and
she's going to bring harmony into his life, right?
Exactly. But also, it's just the idea of him taking it back. Luis Guzman is like, "But why'd you take it?" I don't know, which also is.
But
the
she
resonant line
validates
of
at
this
the
film.
end, no, it's yours.
Right.
It belongs to you.
But the idea is that he wouldn't have, no one expects him to be the kind of guy who would have picked that up. He's not, he doesn't do anything like that ever. This movie is just like the in and out point of of his life is a completely different person because he's internally off screen right before the movie started. Even with the pudding scheme, I don't think that's something that he does normally. I think we're supposed to kind of look at the movie as, here's a man who's made a choice before the movie starts. I need something to be different. I'm very unhappy. I cry for no reason. Something must change. So he's making these active kind of changes in his life that he doesn't know if they're going to do anything, but he just knows that like, well, businessman wearing a suit, that means I'm going to be successful. I'm hopeful for the future. That's why I chose to buy a suit. Business is very important. Being like business acumen is very important. I'm going to do the pudding scheme. All that stuff is happening and just no one supports him in it because that's the situation he's in. And it's the same situation that created him to have these defense mechanisms and be arguably wildly violent because it's been there.
There's
his
just
whole
two
life.
moments that make me, I think, disagree in the sense that, the thing I said about yin yang and the unlikeliness of finding your perfect yang that fixes your damage with their own damage.
Right.
But Lena seems too intelligent and insightful to have discussion of a morning radio DJ who, quote, tells it like it is, be like enough for her. The date scene, I'm surprised that that's enough for her. Like that's entertaining enough conversation.
Yeah.
And then the other moment is, I'll just say this. I mean, I love that it works out for them, but I will say there is a version of this movie that I could equally see them having gone with, where they just feel like being tragic instead of happy, where he loses her because, you know what I mean? Where he shows up at the hotel room and she goes, but you abandoned me at the hospital. That's a deal breaker. And it's like, I think that would be the saddest movie I've ever seen and probably make me want to kill myself.
Yeah.
But that's definitely a way it could have gone in real life easily is like, yeah, you left me at the hospital. That's a deal breaker. No offense, but that's a deal breaker for me, you know? So I guess I just see it as like this beautiful depiction of this thing where it works out so well that I'm like, it's more precious because I don't know how often that happens in real life. I wouldn't say never, but not frequently. Where damage, in my experience at least, is like Jen and I both have damage and it's the opposite. They don't perfectly complement each other. Au contraire, they cause an interference pattern that creates these dynamics that you have to work really hard over years to stop doing. And you go like, that's because that's your damage aggravating my damage. I never have the experience where I'm like, I'm damaged like peanut butter. I'm damaged like chocolate. Together, we're instantly perfect. And you're like, damn, good for you. That's a good job to get.
I think that's the heart of the movie is it's trying to say he definitely has so many red flags. He does need to be fixed. He needs to see a therapist. He's trying to, he just doesn't, doesn't have a support network. There's a line. I don't know if there's anything wrong because I don't know how other people are. That's a very, that's a very neurodivergent line, but also that's like, yeah, he lacks any form of support. It's also why he lies all the time. You know, he calls everyone else a liar, but he lies. He hates himself. It's a defense mechanism built to deal with.
But all he wants is connection. Like we have the famous story of when he threw a hammer through the glass door. They continually ask, where did he get the hammer? Where did he get the hammer? It's finally revealed. He was building a doghouse, which is you're creating a receptacle for a friend, right? You're trying to attract a friend and fill that slot. And then I love that he also has his day job is selling plungers in bulk, which is literally a tool for like stuffing horrible shit down out of sight.
Well, he's all blocked up, baby.
Yeah, he's all blocked up emotionally.
I think that's probably the metaphor, but I don't know. That's probably reaching, but I think it is. I mean, you get to choose anything and you choose a plunger. I mean, maybe it's because it's a mundane joke.
Well, and that's a plunger that is lauded as being unbreakable, but then it breaks, which also speaks to his fragility.
Yeah, but like while we're here, I do think that because I do think that there are misses in this film. I want to kind of talk about this neurodivergence a little bit because I think it needs to be said
that he's kind of just capitalizing on that without a real exploration.
There's moments in this movie that kind of make me wince personally. I think the writing in most of Sandler's performance is, for the most part, intact, like fantastic. It taps right into the feeling of being like not comfortable with the world. And it's, having, I wouldn't say that I've experienced neurodivergence, personally, but I see it in my household. I see it with a lot of my friends. There's moments where it's clearly this movie is playing it for laughs. Like, quote, sometimes I cry for no reason at all.
Then
like
cry.
When he's talking to, and then he starts crying in a kind of Happy Gilmore way, like it's a crying fit.
Like,
it is funny.
Stop crying. Yeah.
I think it's funny because everyone's weird, and that's a good reason. But it's set up to be a tender moment, right? It's not the other characters meant to laugh at him, and that does something for the story. It's literally the filmmaker saying, you, the audience, you laugh at him. And I don't know if PTA or Adam Sandler truly could decipher when to activate it. I think they're good at activating both. I think they knew from a story or a scene perspective that they're supposed to sympathize and also look at him as a fool in some moments. Like it deals with like, he's got flaws. When do we look at his flaws as deeply disturbing, and when do we look at his flaws as kind of funny and foolish? I think I don't know. I can't answer for them, but usually storytellers, when they're against the wall, usually say it's both. I hear that excuse a lot.
It's what you make of it. It's what you want it to be, bro.
Yeah, and that works too. And I understand you can do multiple things in a story, and even in series, you can set up a compound moment and make it more complex. But movies do run in series, and you make one choice at a time. There's only one ball you can score with. And to me, like, they clearly don't know perfectly how to navigate that conversation, but it's such a good introduction into that conversation. It's also one of the only times I can think of a movie that actually tackles his kind of flaw as something not to be fixed, but something to be tender toward. I think that it's the saving grace of the movie that we don't see scenes where she like corrects him, but it is implied, right? It's implied that
not only does she not correct him, but like, and in fact, I think this time hit me as the cutest thing of all. I'm starting to do it with Jen, and they hate it. Is that when they make the date? So he uses wrong words a lot. He says, I'm very food instead of I'm very good. And everyone always makes fun of him. Like, it's a perfect system because it's three. Two times he fucks up.
My name is Back. I meant Jack. Yeah.
And then the third time, he says hi instead of bye to Lena. And instead of correcting him, she says hi and then leaves. She accepts his reality. It's so fucking cute. But it's also cute because it's... like, I don't like saying bye to my beloved, right? I think it's a super cute affectation as a couple to say hi every time you part. That's really cute to me.
It's also because they're in Hawaii, aloha means hello and goodbye. So it's also got that.
Shit. Yeah, that works so well.
Yeah. But yeah, absolutely right. I think that there's ways in which I think that the thing that we kind of need to navigate to really understand it is that there's ways in which he is being corrected by her. Like, he is wildly violent. He needs to see a therapist. He hates himself. He's got self-esteem issues. She does correct him in that she points them out to him, but in a healthy way. That's different from like her, like, all right, I'm going to like carry you all the way. Like, that's not the image we're going to see. The image we see is them holding each other. It's not like she is a solvency for him. They help each other up. I think that that's most rom-coms and stuff like that. That's why that is a timeless story and perspective. But like, I do really think that there are bits where, obviously it is, like, I don't think that you can navigate that space as well, or at least Paul Thomas Anderson and Adam Sandler didn't as well. But namely in his neurodivergence.
Incredible at freaking car crashes. This time I couldn't stop thinking how much I wanted to do a car chase movie. I just think he'd nail it. Like, what if he did the Bourne tetralogy or whatever? The Bourne virology. I think PTA would crush that. PTA Born. Come on, start the
PTA
movement
Born?
online. Born PTA,
Right.
yeah.
Right. It's just going to be full of little like asinine details. Like the main character
Born is
focuses
like
on
an
like
aging
identity.
narcissist. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I'm not sure what even doesn't matter if I have an
I'm
identity
born,
kind
yeah.
of stuff. Yeah. But
What
yeah,
is it to be born?
I love the sensory aspect of this movie.
Of course.
The cacophony kind of goes into kind of like how we were discussing the opening of the film. Everything is a crash with Barry, you know, and I love that they set this up. Like when Barry takes the harmonium, a huge truck drives by. Like it makes you think that he or it is going to get pulverized on the street. There's little pings in the soundscape for no reason. Chairs randomly break. Forklifts run into
the final time when there's this one long shot and then it's panning back across and Luis Guzman just falls off his chair, like his chair collapses. A, it's
like,
hilarious, but B, that's the one beat that puts it over the top to the point where you're like, this workplace is magically chaotic. It's like so perfect, the number of joke beats they get out of that, where you're like, where does he work at the Three Stooges factory? Like it's constantly forklifts through the wall and shit.
Yeah, it's great.
Menacing.
I think like it may be more obvious to us because we've talked about this movie so much together, but I think that why is he doing that? Why is it like, and why is the score like drums constantly to the point that it's anxiety inducing for
that's what life
I've met
is
people
like
who've
for
watched
people
this.
Who take stimulus
That's
way.
Barry.
Yep.
We're getting a sensory glimpse of Barry's world. Yeah, some people I've known really don't like this movie for that exact reason. It's too anxiety inducing. And I think that is, you know,
I also think it's Uncut Gems. The best thing about Uncut Gems is already in Punch Drunk Love, which is
exactly
this kind of editing and sound design strategy, like especially the close miking of the impacts in the bathroom when he's tearing the bathroom apart. It's funny watching this again after watching Uncut Gems, because the one thing I really loved about Uncut Gems was the way they developed the tension all the time rather than systemically. And then I'm watching this again and I'm like, wait a minute. They already did this with Sandler. This is Uncut Gems. It's just not blanketing the whole movie. It's during choice sequences, but it is really Uncut Gemsy.
Yeah, it really is. I think it's still his reigning champ of his career in terms of performance. It's kind of the
Sandler, not PT.
Sandler.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it might be my favorite to rewatch.
You're messing with the Zohar right now and you don't even know it.
Zohan.
Oh, I messed with the Zohan.
Yeah, you did. You got the Zohan. But yeah, that's what else? We talked about in the frame rate, but just to mention it, if you're just doing a rewatch after this episode, look at Red and Blue and Pink. It's typical rom-com shit, but there's an insane amount of color control in this $25 million movie. Literally quadrants of frame are red versus blue, red representing Lena, blue representing Barry, and it signifies the joining of them together until their first date. Red is exclusive to her presence and after the first date, red is everywhere because it's everywhere for Barry. What else do we talked about? There's a very popular take online, which some people might have seen, which is that this is a superhero movie. I think that I personally don't subscribe to that, just because it's like, I think that it's making Barry more of a hero than he actually is. But the idea is that he has superpowers. He literally like does something that makes it seem like he flies at one point. He has a blue cape essentially. And there's red and blue motifs all throughout the film.
And her name is
he's
Lena
trying
Leonard,
to be
like
good. Lois Lane. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that does, but I don't know. I think that PTA could have put that in. If we recall from Magnolia, he also said that he put the frogs in at the end and hadn't heard it from the Bible. Who knows if that's true? The Coen brothers, who are also not like hopeful nihilist filmmakers, are very they're all these filmmakers are enamored with circumstance and the concept of, oh, that's weird that it just happened. Literally for Magnolia, the resonant line is, but it's happened. And the resonant line, I would argue, in this movie is, I don't know. It's said by Barry like 90 times in the movie, and it's because he just doesn't know what's going on, because he doesn't know how to compute the world. But I think when it comes down to it, like if you were to ask the filmmakers about this theme in particular, they probably say like, "Oh, really? Did you see that? That's pretty cool. I didn't intend to put that in there, but I think probably he thought about it once, maybe." That's just my 2 cents.
When the moving truck goes by, it says relocation at its finest, which is the same moment that he's inspired to finally take the step and travel, which he repeatedly says he never will. When he fucks around with the harmonium at the beginning, light slowly blooms onto his face, but then suddenly Luis Guzman opens a garage slider door and the light washes his face and it becomes a sensory overload. So the idea of like with someone who is like Barry, you can be trying to help, but it's still too much too fast. He needs slow light, right? He needs someone to slowly, which is why he sort of titrated into the relationship. She runs into him randomly, then she comes and is there as a date, then she comes and is aggressive, and they're actually on a date. So it's like she eases herself into his life, all that stuff. I actually think it is like Get Out, meaning I do think it intentionally has a tremendous number of little clues, visual and otherwise. The blue lens flare. The first time you get a nice horizontal blue lens flare is when he's solemnly jerking off and you get it off the tilted lamp in his and that's the moment that we don't know it yet, but that's the very moment that he's running afoul of Philip Seymour Hoffman and being about to be blackmailed. Then we get a nice healthy horizontal blue lens flare when he goes to Utah to confront Philip Seymour Hoffman. So like the blue lens flare is menace. There's just so many things that map in that way.
It's more complex because it's also how we end the film, right? As Lena hugs him at the harmonium, a blue lens flare takes over the screen and becomes then flips to the vertical color graph that he
uses. Which are just animated like color feeds.
And I think it's more represents like this lack of comfort with something, which can be seen as a beautiful thing.
Boundaries. Yeah.
It's how you deal with it. You know, it's like, so I think that the ending, it's in one sense, it's anxiety inducing because they didn't have each other. And then by the end of the film, it's like, I can deal with this lens flare. I can deal with this
he can handle
thing
the
that's staring me in the face, and I'm happily playing a harmonium.
And it's concentrated light. So I think the systems are intentional personally.
I think that's very intentional.
And I don't think that PTA always does that. For example, in There Will Be Blood, like I don't think he's always doing mathematical color play. I think he decided for this one to like probably zhuzh up rom-com because he's like, okay, I'm going to do a rom-com. Yes. How can I make it interesting for myself? And he added all this bells and whistles and shit. And I love shit like that.
Right. And this is probably How'd He Do That, but just because it's so relevant, this is a literal choice they made. Robert Elswit, the DP of the film, talked about choosing which stock of film that they were going to use, and they chose it's Fujifilm Super F is the name of it, and it's a very expensive duped low light stock that really gives details in the shadow in the cases where you're like, for example, if you were to point a camera at a docking bay door and then open it up and let the world come in, it's going to err on the side of the shadows having more detail. I think to the sake of like the high end, sacrificing the high end with brightness, so you get less dynamic range. So more or less the point is that they knew that they're going to have blaring differences of light in the frame, bright and dark, almost silhouetted scenes at some point. And they were like, let's get into the dark and pull that detail out as opposed to the bright. And I think that must have been a conversation that they had based off exactly what you were saying in terms of the theme. It's just it's also probably because they knew they wanted to go more run and gun, get more takes, that kind of thing, not have to light every shot. But yeah, it's still a beautiful film because of that, kind of because of its imperfections, which is something, I mean, this is 2002. You don't see a lot of those movies. You don't see any movies at $30 million budget now, but like, smaller indie films, they don't have that control, but they're the only ones who try this type of thing.
I think that was Howdy Do That, and we've come into Howdy Do That.
We've gone into Howdy Do That. Okay.
Yeah.
What else?
Well, I'll spill all my beans and say this is, in the last 4 days, this is podcast 7 of 8. So I don't have anything for Howdy Do That. I'm scrolling up and down. And I'm like, nothing technical. I always forget to write down technical notes.
He needs me. He needs me. He needs me. And I am here to meet the challenge. And let's start with that song. It's a song by Harry Nilsson and sung by Shelley Duvall. Yes, the actress from The Shining, because it's from the Popeye soundtrack. Wow. And I think because she's Olive Oil, and that's the one 1980 with Robin Williams and Shelley Duvall. I think it's because it's kind of a similar situation. Popeye, I mean, when you think about thematically, Popeye is a super violent dude. I'm very food. I don't know. There's a lot of things going on, but like, and Olive Oil is kind of like the balm to his existence, right? And that there's a little bit of that in this movie. What else? We talked about sound being important in this movie. Paul Thomas Anderson brought Gary Rydstrom in to do sound mixing, which is a name you may or may not have heard, depending on if you're into sound mixing. But he's the chief sound was the chief sound editor for Pixar, and he's known for big noisy stuff. Specifically when he worked with Steven Spielberg, Saving Private Ryan, Jurassic Park. These are the beginnings of his career. The filming and the editing took place within a year and a half due to several reasons. One of the first, which is Anderson scrapped the first 2 weeks of shooting because he was like, I feel like I'm making the same movie that I've always been making. And he, to this day, attests that that these 2 weeks changed how he approached filmmaking in a instrumental way and reshot a lot of the Act 3 stuff. That's what they started the production with, is the Act 3 stuff, and he completely kind of threw out. That was also not his choice to throw it out. I think he is a prima donna like all film directors, but it's not like he was just like, after 2 weeks, he was like, I hate it, let's shoot it again. It's because in 2001, there was a writer's strike that occurred that caused everyone to shut down productions for a month or two. So he got a month or two off, looked at the dailies, came back and said, let's just restart. What else we got? The Healthy Choice Frequent Flyer Miles subplot line is actually real. There's a dude, David Phillips, who did this, and Anderson had to receive approval from him and Healthy Choice
to use his life story.
Wow. And that's just kind of cool. Feels very Catch Me If You Can, just like a scam artist who did a thing. I don't know why you have
Reminds
the rights
me of Magnolia
to that situation.
having a quiz boy element. Like that's the little tidbit of factoid that obviously appeals to PTA.
It's all, he loves circumstance, just random happenstance. What else? Anderson also, so if you recall from our Magnolia conversation, he went over budget and went way into the days, shot 90 plus days or something like that, when it was like supposed to only be like 60 or something. And so because of that, at the time, I think it was Miramax, got more control of the movie and Final Cut and all that and such. But he was kind of blessed in the Magnolia because they didn't take advantage of it. But I think he felt the pressure of it because Anderson decided that he denied funding from Revolution Studios. And he was like, I'm going to keep it under 30 million because that's what you gave me. And it's like it was important to him that he did that. Because he knew that the strings that come along with that going over budget, he witnessed in Magnolia, and he wanted to change that. John Bryan actually did find a harmonium with a hole in its bellows.
Nice.
And he covered it with duct tape.
He fell in love.
Yeah. I mean, harmonium is in Magnolia, and that's where Paul Thomas Anderson was like, I love that instrument. What's that instrument? And I'm sure they just talked about harmoniums one night and then He just played notes at him. But yeah, I guess that's kind of how to do that. I just wanted to talk about the editing, some of the filming, and the sound work, because those really are the things that shine in this movie.
You really enriched my appreciation of Punka Lunka Dunka.
Dude,
Thank you.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
To be the olive oil to your Popeye.
Give me a hamburger. That's that, right? Anyway.
That's that.
Wait, what is that? That's that, Burger Boy. What does that imply is next on the docket for this show? Is it Steve Zissou?
It's Steve Zissou.
Yeah.
Is it
Life
Zissou
Aquatic.
or is it Zissou? Is it your
Zissou, I think.
It's Zissou, right? Yeah.
Devon Zissou.
Life Aquatic. And then you'll see us next month for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's that, Mattress Man.
I'm at Swaim_Corp, in case you didn't know. That's on Twitter. Abe's at Abe the Mighty. And if you're listening to this on the free feed, make sure to check out patreon.com/smallbeans, where if you patronize us, you can get access to great bonus shows like Bewilderments and Scientific, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and Spiel Boys.
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The Beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you.